Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Unfortunately, we had some tech difficulties with Paul. We signed up early and I'm working with some new tech, and so we weren't able to get it to work on his computer today. But we're going to reschedule Paul for another day. And thankfully, I have a pocket session ready to go in case I had any issues about Consulting 101. One of the questions many of you had were about a day in the life of consulting. And so what I'd like to invite all of you to do is to start populating some questions. But in the meantime, I want to talk to you all about what it means to be a consultant, whether it's Big Four or whether it's one of the other companies. So what was my day like? Well, before we get into all of that, and thank you, Happy New Year to you as well, Brendan. And man, if I get Brendan in here, we know I'm going to have to schedule Brendan for a talk with all of you guys. Just a really great guy, started his own highly successful company, MKS2. Excited to have him tuning in. So let's talk about consulting. I went to a little bit briefly yesterday with Matt Quick about the difference between consulting and contracting, and I really don't want to go in too far into that, but let's talk about the consulting industry in general. So the idea for some of the larger consulting industries is you get enough work and you hire people to do that work. So when you're considering a career in consulting, the number one thing that I want you to focus on is, one, taking a look at the companies that would align with you. So different companies have different cultures, different focus points, different challenges. You have, companies like EY that are incredible about people, but we're primarily a audit firm. So there's some challenges and some clients that you were not allowed to work with because EY audited them. So different challenges there. You've got other companies, smaller businesses, where you may come in as a consultant and get the opportunity to touch a lot of things in the company. It's a little bit less structured, a little bit more all hands on deck. Whereas if you go to a larger company, you may come in to do a certain thing and have different resources or challenges with where you want to get involved. And so you really need to dial into that. But I'm going to talk to you about a couple topics. We're not going to make this too long today, but I will take some questions about things you need to know about consulting. So let's talk about the general rank structure. And it varies. The titles vary, just like the banking industry. A vice president in banking is different than a vice president in consulting, is different than a vice president at one of the large tech companies. I don't want you to focus so much on titles, but basically, at the Big Four, you have the doers that will start at the bottom, work our way up. So you have your consultants. And so your consultants are generally your entry-level ones, are generally 0 to 2 years of consulting experience, right? So 0 to 2 years of doing a certain and going in consulting on a certain topic. And you can bring them in at the college graduate level, depending on the consulting firms, depending on a lot of the colleges they're recruiting from. But we've had a lot of MBAs from Ivy League schools come in as consultants at Big Four firms. I mean, that's the kind of talent that they're attracting. And working with some of them has just been one of the most incredible experiences of my life. So you've got your consultants are typically 0 to 2 years. Then you usually have your senior consultants, which are the individual contributors, but more experienced, come at a higher level, could start to lead towards leading certain work streams. And they're typically 3 to 5 years of consulting experience. Again, aligned towards a certain topic, what you want to consult on. Then you get into your manager level. And your managers are typically your project managers. So they manage a work stream on a specific contract. And so when you talk about managers, your project managers are typically 5 years plus consulting experience. It goes up significantly from there. Your managers, now, consultants themselves are typically billable the whole time. So your goal is to work on contracts all of your time. Your managers are also billable because they're working on a certain work stream, but they're managing people underneath it. The next level is when you start to get into the executive ranks, and that's the senior manager level, and there's other titles for other things. But when you get to a senior manager level, you are typically looking at managing work streams. So you've got your utilization, you get your projects, your contract work. But then you've also got revenue goals. And so the goal is, as a senior manager, as an executive at any of the firms, Anywhere you want to go above the project manager, program manager, whatever you want to call it level, there's going to be expectations for you to grow business. And then from there, it goes up to the managing director level or the partner principal. And if you understand a partnership model, all partners and principals are business owners, and they come together as a limited liability partnership of companies within the framework of the larger firms. And the managing directors are salaried people that operate at the partner level. Partners are business owners. Now, why would you come in as a managing director instead of a partner? Well, most of the larger firms have a mandatory retirement age. So I believe at EY it was 60 years. So if you're in your mid 50s, it might not make sense for you to pay to join, to buy into the firm and not get that money back in time to retire from your dividends and everything else like that. Or maybe you want to work beyond 60 at an incredible company like an EY, a Deloitte, or whatever. And that's where the managing director part comes in. So the reason I go through all of this when it comes to the firm or any business development or any kind of consulting roles is there are a couple main points you have to talk about when you are deciding whether to join a consulting firm and what level you come in at. And so I would say that the first conversation needs to be had on utilization rate. So are you coming into a fully funded role, right? So is it a contract they won that they need you for, that you're going to hit the ground running and you're going to work 40 hours a week? Is it an unfunded role, in which case they bring you on because they see talent and you're going to have to find opportunities, and they usually have some kind of experienced management team that's going to help you find hours, but you're going to have to work within the framework of the larger firms to find partners, principals, senior managers that can bring you onto their work. And is it going to be the work you like, knowing that there's a time limit? They're not going to pay your salary and not have you billable for forever, right? That's just common sense. So you have to talk about utilization expectations. And if you're going to come in at higher than the project manager level or the manager level, then what is the expectation for the number of hours a week? What percentage of your time are you going to be expected to be billable to a client? That's what we talk about utilization. Very important as you start going into higher levels. Don't go into it blind, and understand that can be negotiable. Then the other part is, what are your revenue goals? If you're looking at coming in higher than the manager level, what are the expectations year one for new revenue you're going to generate? And that can change based on if you're going into the government public sector, if you're going into the commercial sector, as to how fast you could turn around new revenue. But understand that utilization, building relationships with clients, and working at a client site makes it easier for you to build new revenue than just doing it from the cuff, right? So, all of that is very important for the conversation you're going to have when you're considering how to be a consultant and what firms you want to join. Now, let me go over here and let's talk about it real quick. If you're going into the government public sector, I know I have a large audience that are service members, veterans, military spouses, and everybody thinks about this, hey, I've been doing this for 20, 25, 30 years. I can roll right into a defense job and just make oodles of money, and they're going to throw six-figure jobs at me. That's not always the case. So what I want you to understand is when we go back to the revenue goals piece, it's not just about shaking hands. It's not about people you know. And I think you have to understand that something one of my mentors said to me when I was getting out was, do you understand the business development life cycle? Do you understand how contracts are awarded in the government public sector? Do you understand how you can influence that through relationships? And do you have the relationships associated to the different contracts or service lines that your company wants to pursue? And when you go in and have those conversations with the hiring officials or decision makers, if you want to go on at the higher levels, can you speak specifics to the relationships and the contracts and the revenue that you can bring to that firm, right? If you're going to come in at that level, it's something important to be able to discuss. And so one of the things I think that a lot of service members really fail, especially more senior, really fail to do is get that understanding of the business development lifecycle before you get out, so you can speak to it in terms that make sense to an owner like Brendan. That Brendan you'd be asking him to invest a significant amount of money in you to bring business to his company. And so I'm going to tell you that if you're thinking about, or you want to go in and be an executive or a senior advisor, whatever you want to call it, if you want to be a senior manager, if you want to be anything other than project manager level in any consulting industry, any business development, any government contractor, then you've got to really, before you get out or as soon as possible, learn about business development. So my advice that was given to me that I did not listen, thankfully I had a year to learn it afterwards, was to get to all the contracting officer representative courses you can possibly do. Make sure that you get in there. You can go to Defense Acquisition University, get all those core classes, learn about the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulation, and make sure you understand how the government contracts for work and how you can influence it. Find mentors in the field that can start talking you through that ahead of time. Then the next thing I would tell everyone to do is, up to a year out, go to your ethics lawyer or go to JAG and find out how your contracts you've been involved with are going to impact your next year to 2 years. So is there going to be a cooling off period? And if you're interested in certain companies, can you recuse yourself from certain contracting actions so that you can start your cooling off period early? So I will tell you, for me, I had been out of the Army for a year when I joined EY. And before I joined EY, before they would give me my firm written offer, my official offer, I had to go back to JAG and get an ethics letter, even though I'd been out of the Army for a year. And that was because the firm wanted to make sure that I was able to work on the things that I was going to work on. So I actually went back. I remember I called to Fort Belvoir JAG, and they said, well, you worked at INSCOM. You're better off going to the INSCOM lawyer. And I had to go back to the INSCOM lawyer and ask her and her team for a letter about my ability to work at the firm and how much, if I was going to be able to actually work on certain contracts or anything, even though they weren't planning on using me that way. And that actually held up my hiring action a couple of weeks, which is quick turnaround for JAG. They had a lot of stuff on their plate, and to have a retired sergeant major call, say I had an ethics letter, it's not going to be turned around day one. Let's just be honest on this. So I do recommend always reaching out to your enlisted or officer, reaching out to your ethics attorney, your JAG, and finding out what you can and cannot do and when you can start your cooling off period. And if they say, hey, come back to me when you're 1 month out, beep, throw the red flag, say that's BS, and pick a company, pick a role, and give it to them and say, can I do this? Let's get the ball. Don't let them just push you off to the side. Really engage and get real ethics advice. So let me see here. I'm going to go over to my banner right here. I know I wanted to keep these fairly short. So I guess let's put it up here. What questions do you have about consulting? So I've got right here, I've got JB said, good afternoon and Happy New Year. Did you say that you should have some consulting experience to become a project manager? So I will share with you that it is not necessary if you have specific experience for that specific contract. But I will also say that I do not recommend anybody in the military coming into a role higher than manager in a large consulting firm unless you truly understand the business development process. And that it definitely helps having consulting experience if you're going to be a project manager in a consulting firm. It's not definitely necessary across the world for anything else. So let's see if we have any other questions. We've got Christopher said DAU carries weight, especially if you're looking for contracting function jobs, but other business functions. And I would agree, but I would just say being able to demonstrate the knowledge you have about the contracting process, and also to be able to speak words in a way that are going to make sense to a decision maker, an executive in a consulting firm, definitely help. And thanks, Vincent. That cooling off period. So many people think their Rolodex are going to open a lot of doors for them, and then they realize because they haven't really paid attention, they get that cooling period off, and they end up starting an LLC and waiting a year or two before they could do anything or finding a job outside of that function. So it's really important for you and the company you join to talk to the ethics lawyer. So I've got, how much is too much or too little to charge per day, minimum terms? So James, you're talking about individual consulting, I'm assuming, right? I would say that in larger firms, they have bill rates. I'm not going to get into what those are. Those vary, and they also vary based on government contracts or commercial clients, because the government's just not going to pay the same amount that commercial clients are going to pay. So when it comes to how much or too little to charge per day, I think that there is an art to that sale, and you have to understand what the value is and what makes you stand out from other consultants, and really understand how much the client is willing to pay. And let's see. So I've got Vincent said, what if I accept an offer with a consultant firm and they make me sign a non-competitive clause? What does that mean? Okay, so there's a couple things that we have to discuss about contracting in general when it comes to the defense sector. So when we talk about signing offers, right? So when we talk about signing offers, there's two things you want to know. Is the role fully funded? One, so meaning have they won the contract? Or is it a contingent offer, meaning they are competing on the contract, and if they win, they might give you the job. So when we talk about those two different types of offers, the fully funded is easy. We're making you a firm written offer. You start on this date. Here's your salary. Are you okay with that? Do we negotiate? Whatnot? Easy. And you sign a non-competitive clause in that, you get it for what it is. Usually it's a line that you're not going to work for a period of time on that specific work stream. Now, and granted, I'm not a lawyer, but if you want to sign for a contingent offer, the contingent offer typically means we will give you the job if you win the job, if we win the contract, if your clearance passes, if we decide to hire you. Basically means that they're going to use your resume to submit as key personnel or have it in their database in case they win. It doesn't mean they're actually going to have to win you or to hire you. So I just caution anybody that signs non-competitive or signs contingent offers to realize that that is a lottery ticket, that you have not gotten that job. Please do not move for that job because you signed a contingent offer. Please do not stop looking because you signed a contingent offer. A really good win rate, we call it P-win, probability of win, for a new contract is about 30%. Like, that's awesome. And so that means at the best, you might have a 30% chance of getting that job. So aside from that, non-competitive clauses, I would say, Vincent, that everything's negotiable. So have a mentor, have a lawyer, have somebody else take a look at that clause before you decide to sign it, so you can find out what the ramifications are of that if you do sign it, and make sure that you're making the best decision for your family. Hopefully that answered, Vincent. Let's see. So please describe, Chad says, please describe your take on translating senior staff and leadership positions for manager roles. So great question, Chad. So let's talk about this. I don't care about the senior staff or leadership positions at all for these manager roles. So when we're talking about consulting, right, what matters is what experience do you have leading teams for that contract, right? If I'm going to hand your resume to someone that says, this is to the client, this is who you're going to get, they don't care about all this other stuff out here. They care about this specific role. And so I think that it's important for you to decide, one, what you want to consult on, and two, articulating your experience for those roles. the experience you have leading teams doing those things. And that's why I always think people get caught into the trap of trying to reverse engineer things, meaning, I have all this experience in my resume. I captured 10, 15, 20 years of experience. How do I translate that in general? And instead of saying, I want to do this, now let me go back and pull my thread and say what I've done. So what I will say is that a lot of staff roles do align because you've led projects. Everything with a start and an end date could be described as a project. You've managed cross-functional teams. You've had to work across different work streams. It's actually, I've found a lot of times the staff roles translate quite a bit more effectively than the general leadership roles. But then as the leadership roles, you're a lot of times you're a program manager or a senior project manager in your own way. You just have a project that's a larger scale. So you have to find a way to describe that in a way that resonates with the firm or the service lines that you want to pursue. And then let's see if there's one more question. Gregory says non-compete versus non-solicitation is important to understand. Non-compete is in line with what Michael Quinn is saying. Non-solicitation means you can't steal clients from who you are working for. Great answer, Gregory. Thank you. I appreciate your feedback on that. And then I've got Trish Martinelli saying, what do you think about your first job out of the military being your own LLC? So that's a great one. What I would say is that, one, you should, all the stuff I said about being a consultant, you should be doing ahead of time. Two, so you need to understand business development in an LLC, whether it's in the commercial or government public sector. Two, if you're a service-disabled veteran, then there are sole source and set-aside contracts. Government agencies are required or expected to have a percentage of their contracts go to those disadvantaged entities. So if you are a service-disabled veteran and you get CVE certified, then you can get set-asides or you can get sole source contracts up to $4 million, I believe it is, if you have the right client and they want what you're serving. But I will tell you that there are challenges. You've got to understand how to set up that business. You've got to have the infrastructure in place. You've got to know how to hire people. You've got to have the accountants. You've got to have everything else involved. And it's hard to do that right off the bat. So I always recommend for people, if you're going to start a business right out of the military, if you're financially strong enough and you can do it and you can handle the ups and downs for a couple of years, then that's fine. Go do it if it's your passion. If you're already selling items or services and people are buying it, then you're great. But if you're just planning on starting it, I always recommend people to bootstrap for a year or two. So work a job and work on your business so that, one, if you're really passionate about it, you'll know because you'll still work on it. And two, you can survive the ups and downs of starting a new business. So I bootstrapped for 2 years before just really leaning down and really focusing on my business because I needed that flexibility and I needed to learn. So that's my thoughts on that. And let's see. I've got one of the key skills to learn and adapt when starting new businesses, and that too in this current economic turmoil. So let's put it this way. This takes it away from consulting. So this will probably be the last question for now. When it comes to starting a new business, the first thing is what are you doing? Like, what problem are you solving? What need are you fulfilling? And then two, how are you getting to clients? And so I think a lot, it's kind of crazy to me. Some people think the key is just starting a website. And the problem is you got to get people to go to your website. And so the skills that you have to learn and adapt are going to be, one, how do you sell? How do you build a brand? How do you build relationships enough that people come to you for those services? So that's number one, is to build the clients or the book of business, or to have access to clients so that you can get those phone calls to turn those sales. Two is, are you surrounding yourself with knowledgeable people that are going to be able to help you build that business in a meaningful way? And that experience is invaluable when it comes to starting a business. Understanding the different labor laws and HR and all the different billing systems, how to find the right talent, tax implementations, whether it's the difference between an LLC, an S Corp, a C Corp, and how to make those decisions, whether you're talking about funding, whether you're talking about bringing in business partners or investors. I mean, there's a huge world out there. And so it's key to find the right mentorship. And I think that that's going to be the biggest thing is how do you get your business? What are you doing? What need are you filling? What problem are you solving that people want? And how do you surround yourself with the right people and experience so you can be successful? So we're getting close to 30 minutes right now. I don't see any other questions that are relevant to this topic. We'll get to it another day. I am going to get the invite. I'm going to bet that Brian Arrington, our interviewer for tomorrow, has the technology, is ready to go. I'm excited to interview him. Tomorrow we got Brian Arrington. He's a business initiatives consultant for Wells Fargo. So he's going to talk about what his day's like, what he actually does. I'm really excited to learn that myself. I've never talked to him about it, and how, hopefully he'll share a little bit of how he got the role. Thanks a lot, everybody, and we will talk to you again soon.